I didn't post about International Women's Day yesterday because I tend to shy away from controversial topics on YouTube. I was worried about the comments it would bring, and I don't like talking about any nuanced issue on any social media platform. What usually happens is overgeneralization and assumptions and rapidly deteriorating conversation and zero actual communication. However, I'm making an exception. A couple of Christians said some things that made me cringe, and it touches on something that worries me about Christian culture. And it's not just a Christian thing, it's a human trait, so stick with me. I'm zeroing in on Christians because I feel more comfortable to call out something that I've personally dealt with. I know we've all noticed recently how polarized the country has become. That's old news. Hopefully we've all taken some time to think about how easy it is to vilify people and use extremists to sum up and dismiss entire groups of people. Hopefully we're all more aware that we need to intentionally listen to why a person is upset and meet them with respect in order for any kind of productive conversation to happen. And hopefully we've learned that things don't change without effort. But those things are hard. They take extra work and extra time and a lot of listening thoughtfully to people that we don't agree with, and it's hard. So Christians, I have a bone to pick with you, and really in reality it's a couple of adjacent bones, but we'll just single out the one today. I don't know when this happened, and maybe it's been true all along, but at some point along the line it became acceptable and even applaudable to mock and dismiss a culture that's recognizing the negative effects of sin on the world. We need a coffee break. Take a second. I see people who are broken and angry over racial inequality and gender inequality and ableism and abuse, and they're longing for justice. And I see that met by Christians with not only apathy, but downright dismissal. You've constructed your own reality, and I know it's more pleasant to live in than what I see around me. I know it's more peaceful to feel justified in ignoring hurt, even your own. I know life feels simpler that way, and you wish everyone else would just instantly let go of their bad feelings and get along with everyone just like you do. So instead of leaping at the chance to agree with the broken that yes, things are not how they're supposed to be, and yes, we actually have answers, instead of compassion and grief at the devastation of sin, you respond that the problem doesn't exist. You say you can disagree, but you can't be angry about it because that invalidates your point. You might say, you're throwing a hissy fit, you don't deserve to be heard. Or you may say you don't have the right to be hurt when the person didn't mean to hurt you. I see huge swaths of Christians siding with abusers and oppressors and the ignorantly privileged because they don't know how to handle exposed hurt and anger. They don't know how to see the truth when it's not expressed comfortably or doesn't fit with their experience or just isn't very pleasant. Christians, and the irony is, those of you who are struggling with this won't listen to me because there are hints of anger and frustration in my voice, but the bottom line is I think we've somehow come to believe that God can't handle our anger and our anguish and our grief process when it comes to dealing with the effects of injustice and sin on the world. Somehow, our belief that God is good has translated itself into having to sugarcoat the truth into something that is incapable of recognizing the negative effects of abuse and oppression, even or especially when it's subtle. Somehow Christianity now expects people to minimize what's happened to them into something they can immediately set aside and wrap up into some sweet life lesson for you. Christians don't allow any time for victims to grapple with how God could allow this to happen or how the people around them could allow this to happen. And to boot, Christianity turns to their abusers and oppressors and welcomes them in with open arms, ready and willing to embrace all of the excuses and justifications for their actions, in the name of grace and forgiveness. What does this say to the hurting? You must deny what happened to you and the effects it had on your life in order to be accepted. And what does this say to abusers? You don't really have to stop abusing or make any changes in order to be accepted. Maybe that's too simplistic, but I have a theory as to why this happens. Abusers and oppressors are more than happy to say what they need to say in order to get back into your good graces and happy to never talk about it ever again. Abused people, however, are so annoying, aren't they? They're depressed and they're angry and they're bitter and they feel betrayed by God and all of the people around them. Why can't they just get over it? They're only hurting themselves and making everybody else feel uncomfortable. And just when you think they're finally happy and fun to be around, something else reminds them of it and you have to start from square one. It's so tedious. Friends, it is hard. It does take patience. And it does take real training in order to know how to talk to someone who's been through real hurt. But that sort of dismissive behavior creates shells of people, and it empowers abusers and oppressors. When you don't allow a victim to go through the grief of what happened to them and face it head on, you're telling them that there are parts of their hearts and their stories that God doesn't want to see and you don't want any part of. You're telling them that because something outside of their control happened to them, that makes them ugly and difficult. You encourage them to disengage from their hurt and their potential to have a deeper, fuller relationship with God that's come through struggle, and instead exchange it for one that makes sense and is linear and is pretty. You tell them that dealing with those hurts should be a quick, one-time thing that they never deal with ever again. Because if they get angry, or if they struggle with bitterness again, they're not being a good Christian. I had to change the battery. I'm sorry that the framing is a little different now. We, as people, must learn how to be more discerning when we listen to people who are speaking in hurt and anger and fear. And we have to learn how to see the truth in that rather than encourage them to make it prettier or to ignore those feelings. We must also be more discerning when we feel the urge to side with someone who wants to make things uncomplicated and forget whatever messy thing that happened. And Christians, our relationship with brokenness and redemption needs to be widened, and the length of the time that process takes needs to be respected. By asking someone to minimize their suffering and ignore the emotions that come with it, you're minimizing the power of the gospel. Don't rob someone of that just so you can feel more comfortable. Don't minimize the real suffering in the world so you don't have to think about it complexly or deal with it at all. There's a quote that maybe you've heard before. It's not okay to be angry with God, and it's not okay to not tell him about it. And I think we need to embrace that more in our Christian cliques. These emotions that we've classified as negative and un-Christ-like still exist. We still have them, we still go through them, and to deny that we have them and to deny that it's important to go through them is to deny the healing process that God has set up. I feel like I could keep ranting about this and how it applies in different areas for quite a while longer, but if you take nothing else away, take this. If you find yourself wanting to look away from a situation, consider hard if it's because it's not important and it's wrong, or if it's because you want to pretend that life is easier to deal with than it is.